Social 20-1, the nation state. Well, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your extra long spring break. Looks like we're going to be doing this for at least a couple of months and probably longer than that. First time I've done this, so bear with me and be patient now. We're looking at the nation state. We're still in chapter 7. What we look at today is what actions can a nation state take to ensure security and survival as it functions with and around other nation states, some of whom might be threatening, bigger, etc. Remember that a nation state is sovereign and has internationally recognized borders, and other countries have to recognize those borders and sovereignty as well. A nation does not have borders or sovereignty. It's just a group of people that might have a few things in common. Nation state must have borders and sovereignty. And again, it's after security and survival. There are 5 things a nation state can do. It can do all 5, or maybe a combination of the 5, to ensure security and survival. So down here we've got a nation state. That nation state could be Canada, could be the US, could be China, Russia, North Korea, could be any nation state, but it's got to be a nation state. Option number 1, open to a nation state to ensure security survival, would be expansionism. Expansionism is simple. You make your nation state bigger at the expense of another nation state. It's a plausible mode of thinking to assume that if you make yourself bigger, you can ensure the survival and security of your nation state. This tactic was really common in the 1930s. It's one of the reasons for World War II, among other things. So this aggressive nation state on the left over here could be maybe Germany in the 1930s, Italy, Japan in the 1930s, could be Russia today, could even be America today if you look at American foreign policies in certain ways. The fist, of course, is your act of aggression and invasion. And what always happens is when you expand, you've got to take territory away from somebody else. And that can lead and does lead to conflict and war, World War I, World War II, and so on. Option number 2 is to defend. Defend against aggression from another nation state. And this is sometimes easier said than done, but as I said before, for expansionism to work, you've got to take land from somebody else. And they're probably going to fight back. So option 2 is defense, and that usually culminates with conflict and war. Option 3 is alliance. Again, this one was very common in the years leading up to both World War I, World War II. It's a very common tactic today. An alliance is when 2 or more nation states band together and they vow to protect each other against other nation states in their aggression. So good examples of alliance from history might be the Triple Entente or the Triple Alliance. There were 2 very big alliances that had a big hand to play in the beginning of World War I. The Triple Entente was Britain, France, and Russia, and the Triple Alliance was Italy, Austria-Hungary, and of course Germany. Trouble with an alliance is that if there's a skirmish between one of the nations that is part of the alliance, that initial skirmish pulls the other countries into that conflict as well. And we'll look at examples of that from World War I would be a good one. When Germany became aggressive, they pulled the other 2 members of the Triple Alliance into their conflict. And what it does, it makes a small war a big war really quick. Option 4 is isolationism. And so this involves a nation state going off on its own and not getting involved politically, economically, or both with the actions of other nation states. So a good example of isolationism, and this one would surprise you, but in the years leading up to World War II, the United States of America was an isolationist state. They isolated themselves politically and economically from what was going on in Europe in World War II, and they actually didn't enter World War II until 1941. Isolationism might seem like a good idea at the time, but it has dire consequences that go with it too. And we'll be learning about that in Chapter 7. final measure, action a nation state can take to ensure security and survival is that of negotiation, maybe peaceful interaction with other nation states. So this could involve a treaty. A good example would be the Treaty of Versailles from 1919. That's an example of nation states working together to solve a problem, to come together. The irony behind the Treaty of Versailles, it was supposed to prevent World War II, but in many ways was the direct beginning of World War II. We'll be talking about that in Chapter 7. So there you go, 5 measures that nation states can take to ensure security and survival. Some are more aggressive than others. Some involve staying out of things completely. Nation states can use one of the 5, 2 of the 5, or all 5 when they try to achieve security and survival. And we'll be taking a look at specific examples of each tactic and attach countries to it as we go through Chapter 7. By the way, when nations choose negotiation or isolation, alliance, defense, or even expansionism, those actions are what are known as a foreign policy. They make up a nation state's foreign policy. So Canada's foreign policy isn't based very much, if at all, on expansionism. Canada has defended itself and the British Empire in its past a lot. Canada has forged alliances with other countries. Canada's never really isolated herself from the actions of other nation states. Canada negotiates and interacts a lot with other nation states. And that pattern, that combination of those 5 choices would be Canada's foreign policy. If we talked about a country like Germany again in the 1930s, they used expansionism a lot. One could argue they used defense. They would at least. They did form alliances. We didn't see much isolationism. Believe it or not, they did negotiate and interact peacefully with some nation states, at least for a while. Uh, their negotiation, their treaty with Russia comes to mind just before they invaded them in the 1940s. But there you have it. 5 combinations, 5 tactics nation states can use to interact with other nation states. There's the focus of Chapter 7. We're going to look at foreign policy, and we're going to decide how far should you pursue national interest. What is best for your nation when you determine your nation state's foreign policy? Should your nation always come first? Should you consider other nation states too? And to what degree are you going to do that? Historical examples we're going to study will be World War I, the interwar period, which is what we call the 1920s and 30s, and finally World War II and what led to that and what were the results of these patterns and these interactions. You're going to really like Chapter 7. It's one of the best chapters in all of high school social studies. Thanks for paying attention and following along. We'll talk about more tomorrow. Again, always be checking D2L. Go to the calendar, see what we're going to do that day. You can print this stuff off and follow along as I talk about it. And I will post all readings and assignments on D2L using the calendar tool all the time. Thanks for listening. Bye.